Hello, everyone. I hope you're doing well. I wanted to get on here today and speak about something that's very important. It has a very important aspect to who I am. I've talked about finally realizing all the years that I've been making videos on this channel reached the point where I could say, I am here because I am a lifelong survivor of narcissism and narcissistic entanglement. And I am here to say, and proud to say, that because I've worked on myself for so many years, I've been able to come out of it more and more and more. And so I want to talk to you about my weekend, which was supposed to be a wonderful, wonderful outing, and it was very bad. There were some aspects to it that were very intense and shocking. And this is what happens when you are with people who haven't faced their own shadow, all right? So I'm here for the empaths, all right? And if you're new to my channel, my name is Sabrina. I am a mystic. I am recovering from the emotional shock of what actually happened. And this is what happens when you realize that you've been involved with someone that is now decided to take off their mask and show you who the frick they really are. And it's either because they've had deep-seated resentments for a long time, or they just can't help the way they are, okay? They're not healed. So I went on a weekend camping trip for a second time with someone that I was really thinking that we were having a friendship, and it was getting closer, okay? And I'm not even at my table. My table's a mess. I have a headache. I am recovering now from the nervous system that was completely disrupted and disentangled. I was grieving. I was sad. I was heavy-hearted and crying off and on a little bit, tears coming down, tears swelling up in my eyes. And it took me a couple of days to figure out what the hell just happened. And fortunately, I'm not married to this person. I can cut her off. And I'm here to let you know that you should not ever be afraid to do that, no matter what. After 8 years, you would think things would get better. But what happens is when the mask comes off and you are disrespected, as well as disrupted, your nervous system is really disrupted, they feel better. These are angry people, okay? Angry people. You need to know, if you don't know, narcissists are very angry. This particular person has Mars in a debilitated aspect in her chart. I don't give a frick, okay? I'm just looking at it and I'm going, all right, look at that. It's not just passive aggressive, which, if you do that with a friend and you talk it out, then maybe it gets better. Maybe it doesn't. Once we reach the age of 50, our personality is cemented in, and I've said that before. I recently encountered someone who had what I learned is called narcissistic patterning. It's like they been cut out of a cloth from a pattern of the narcissist who raised them, and they've never examined anything. They've had their psychotic episodes, their breakdowns, their depressions, and they've never once reached out to a professional to try to examine why this was happening. So they become completely enmeshed with a dysregulated nervous system. And so for all intents and purposes, they are narcissists. It's very hard to diagnose and separate the person. And a child who's born of a narcissist could actually also be meant to become a narcissist. Either way, you need to recognize the behaviors. Maybe it's a very unhealed empath. It's not your job to remain their friend and suffer whether they're healing or they're not healing. If they have entered counseling and they are starting to improve, they're realizing certain things, great. But an unhealed empath who's reached the age of 56, I'm not going to fool myself. So this was her birthday weekend, and she chose me to go camping for a second time. Now, the first time that we went out camping, I took a cot. I was utterly miserable. In the middle of the night, I threw the cot out of the tent, slept on the ground, and was utterly miserable the following morning. We drove into town. We actually went to McDonald's for hash browns and coffee. I mean, it was a really pleasant outing that we had. But we drove into town to check on the girls here and their food and everything in their cat box. And then we picked up my air bed. So I told her I might sleep better if I get my air bed. And I discovered it was a USB, so we plugged it into her car and blew it up. That evening, the temperature outside was just very, very pleasant. It wasn't too cold, it wasn't too humid, and I had a very good night's sleep. So I woke up bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and for some reason she slept until 9. I was able to make a fire, and I was able to get my little propane cooker lit. I turned the knob, got the knob turned, and told her I made coffee and the fire is on. So I learned how to do that from her the previous evening. Jade? Ouch. Sorry, guys, she's jealous. She just bit me. Oh, my God. So I haven't colored my hair. I haven't put on my makeup. I've got a headache. It's 2 o'clock already. I'm going to need to go out. First of all, I'm going to need to eat a late breakfast. And then I'm going to go out later and work a little bit. But Sunday I came home and I just went to bed. So on this camping trip, she brings a larger tent, which one of her clients gave her. Turned out to be filthy, dirty, stinky mess. I didn't have any idea how bad it was. She said she cleaned it. Well, she told me it still kind of smells a little bit mildewy or moldy, but it was big enough for me to stand up in. That was one of the things we talked about. I can't ever do this again. My tent's too small. I can't stand up. My air bed barely fit into it. Corner to corner, got it squished in there. So I had a lot more room, but the weather was awful. It wasn't supposed to be awful. And along with the heat, there was high humidity. So, when you've got a tent, I'm learning, you've got a lot of other things you have to buy. You probably need a battery like a Jackery. You need some kind of a electric blanket or mattress pad. You need a rug to go under the air bed. You need several lanterns. You might need an electric blanket. those things aren't as cheap, well, inexpensive, right, as they used to be. They're very expensive. So there's the Jackery, the electric blanket, some type of a light, or maybe a battery-operated heater, or in this case, I needed an air conditioner. And it's not because I'm a princess who needs to be, treated like I'm in a hotel. I did tell her back in June, I want to go glamping. I want to be a lot more comfortable than I've ever been in my life. Ouch. In my life, when I've gone camping, we roughed it. And even when I took my kids camping to Boy Scouts, we had to rough it. And they said they never wanted to do it again, and we haven't. So I said, this will be like the third or fourth time in my life, and I want it to be more pleasant. So now she's in her 50s, and I'm older than her. So I said, I have to be able to stand up. I have to be able to be not too cold and not too warm. I don't want to be miserable and grumpy and I can't stand up and I can't walk for 20 minutes in the morning. So the first time that we went camping, I had to walk to the bathroom and I had my flashlight, my phone, right? And I had it pointed down to my feet so I could see in front of me. It was very dark. I didn't want to trip over a rock and fall. I've had enough falls in my life. I don't want to fall anymore. And she's telling me, turn the light off. Excuse me? I said, I need to see where I'm going. Oh, you're going to bother the neighbors. They're in their camper sleeping. What's going on here? When I told her I don't want to trip and fall, then she shut up. But they're not really listening. They really aren't. They don't want connections, guys. They want compliance. I think you should turn that light off. Another thing she had done when I got in her car was my notifications go ding, and I can turn the volume way, way down. So she complained about the noise on the phone, the notifications. I said, I can turn it way, 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 way down. I might get a notification about an email from my landlord or something, right? No, turn it off. Can you turn that off, please? So I did. Now I began to suspect that she really has a nervous system that's highly dysregulated. My mother was very picky about noises. And there was a couple of times when she would say to me on the first camping trip, "You're talking too loud." What? You're talking really loud. We have neighbors. I don't think they can hear me. They're way over there and way over there. I'm not talking that loud. I'm talking to you in a normal tone of voice. She said, "No, you're loud. You're kind of loud." So I'm thinking maybe she's got the similar type of a condition as my mother, who was a narcissist. She had bad nerves. Aside from, deep-seated anger. Aside from those things, it was a very pleasant camping trip because I had a very good night's sleep the second night out. And so we planned our next camping trip. We had decided that I need a bigger tent, and I would like to be at ground level. We were down in between a bunch of trees. And I had said, we're two women alone. I'd like to be up at ground level, even if we have neighbors. I'd feel a little bit safer. So she agreed. We talked about electricity, to plug in our phones, maybe plug in a light, maybe plug in an electric blanket. So she rented a site with an electric post. So that's what we did this time. Weekend of her birthday, August 21st, Friday, August 22nd, Saturday, and then we were leaving on Sunday afternoon. So this time we have 3 tents. There's the larger tent, and then her tent is still pretty small, and then the smaller tent that I had been in, we were using for food storage. She put up all 3 tents. I went over to put my tent up, and she said, no, I got it. Okay. Why can't I help? So my tent's just a pop-up. She popped it up, no problem. I gave her the stake, she staked it down. The weather started getting really warm. It took her probably 20 minutes at least to put up the larger tent that she gave to me. And that's when she said, you don't know what it really looked like. I showed you the picture after I cleaned it. When it was given to me, it was full of mud. And then I discovered that it was stinky and moldy and mildewy after I cleaned out the mud. And so then I was in the process of cleaning it with just soap and water. I asked her if she used bleach. I think she said no, I didn't want to, I guess, damage the fabric because it's very old. So we got there after 4:30. Pretty much the tents were put up, and then she brought an electric stove. So I cooked a little bit of our dinner on the electric stove. There was a lot of things I couldn't find. For some reason, the prepping made me very stiff and sore. I'd made a lot of trips down to the garage, climbed a lot of stairs coming back up, and I've been dealing with a lot to try to get through August and get my truck fixed and then go out and do DoorDash and catch up on some bills. So I wasn't counting how many times I was doing that. So I was pretty stiff and sore, and then I had a miserable night sleeping. I managed to cook our little meal on the little frying pan that she had for us. She thanked me. I put placemats and plates and silverware to give her a nice little birthday dinner. So the following morning, I'm even more miserable than I was the previous night. And I think it was that night, Friday night or Saturday night, she went to put the food in the tent. And it was dark. I said to her, wow, it is dark out here. There's no light. And I took my phone with the flashlight and I went over to flash it to hold it on her hand while she was zipping. I might have to stop and get coffee. Zipping up the little tent that she was putting all of our food, everything basically, inside the little tent to protect it. So I was flashing the light. I can't see in the dark. You need some light. And I flashed the light, and she said, I don't need that much light. She even made a comment like, oh, you're messing up my night vision. I'm like, what? Are you a cat? Said, I stumbled around now and I realized, turn the freaking light on, Sabrina. You cannot see properly. Turn on the light. I said, I can't see in the dark. So I guess I brought it up to a point where it was kind of on her face, and she said, move the light a little. So I moved it. It's on my face. I'm like, okay. So then I'm moving it closer, and following her as she's zipping, and she says at me, "Get that flashlight out of my face." I'm like, "Wow, you're a bitch." The mask came off. You go through 7, 8 years with someone and you never really spend more than a few hours at a time. And now, you're on your second weekend trip with them and you're seeing more aspects of them than you saw previously. Again, that evening, I'm walking down to the toilet, the shower stall, with my flashlight, pointing down to the ground. And she didn't know was every time you talk back to the narcissist, which for all intents and purposes, guys, I don't care. I have to say this. I hate it. They're mad. So do you want me to fall? If I trip and fall on a rock or my flip-flops, right? Because I've got wedgies. If my ankle, because I'm a mature lady, decides it's having a moment and, I stumble and then there's a rock and then I fall, would that make you happy? I didn't even go into all that. I'm like, something's wrong here. Something is terribly, terribly wrong here. And you have to listen to your intuition. When you become aware, you become even more sensitive than you were. As an empath, you're already sensitive. You're not hypersensitive necessarily. You're not insecure, right? Where you've got an ego that is going to be touched, right? You've got a nerve ending that's touched because of your ego. No, when you've been healing your nervous system for months and years, you become more aware. And so I'm seeing that there's something very, very wrong here. We're supposed to be two people that owned a business. We have a meeting of the minds. You have a leader mind. I have a leader mind, a teacher mind, a teacher mind. But you're talking to me like a freaking subordinate. I let it go, and I've let it go several times in the past. And only when she was inebriated, yes, she was drinking quite a lot over the 8 years that I've known her. A glass of wine every night is what I've heard her say many times. And after we went out for a drink one night, which I don't hardly ever drink, she was inebriated. And she came up to me and said, "Oh, Sabrina, I want to apologize for being so hard on you about such and such. And I think it was about my garage. You should get rid of that garage. You could save X amount of dollars every month." I said, that's like trying to tell me to stop eating out because it's $5. $5 is not going to make me or break me either way right now. I can make up that amount of money in a week. I just need to go back to work, or I need to work another half a day. So, and I'm still paying less money here than I was in my previous apartment. So shut up. I'm so sorry I've been hard on you and you've been so patient, so tolerant. Now, there was a part of her that meant it. And I said, "Oh, well, I just let it." She said, I'm surprised you're still putting up with me." There's a truth in that. They want you to continue to put up with them. They know there are people that won't put up with them. But I hadn't been seeing her as much. And there's a reason for that also. When they perform their disappearing act, it's for a reason. They know their mask is going to come off at some point, and they don't want to risk exposing themselves and losing you as a source of supply, really. A source of attention. That's what you are. Your presence is a source of company and attention and energy. And I just told her at that point, I just kind of let it go because she went home and we didn't see each other that often. I've also complained in the past that she doesn't respond to my text messages. Why are you ghosting me? Why, I haven't heard from you in 2 or 3 months. What's been going on? Oh, well, I'm here now. Oh. I wanted to say, you sound like a immature little young boyfriend. If I was a stupid young girl, I would be so happy to you to finally come and give me your presents. I'm graced. Come on now. For her to say, well, I'm here now. And unfortunately, she does have a lot of this masculine energy in her. And people like that really, really, really need to align themselves with a goddess. But she's petite, she's charming, she can be funny, and she's soft-spoken, and she has a little accent. So there's a lot that people will tolerate when they know how to be charming. Very manipulative, okay? I'm finding that out. But if they have this nasty side to them, which they do, and it finally comes out, it's probably a time where they can't spend more than half a day with you and they can't take it anymore. And so they're snapping your head off, they're biting your head off, and then it gets worse. So we come into town because I've got to get a few things I forgot. And then I tell her we really should get you a floaty if we're going to float on the lake. She doesn't want to spend money. She doesn't want to spend money on herself. She doesn't want to. And they've saved quite a lot of money. A lot of money, okay? Now, there's a knowledge in Hinduism. I just heard from a priest who said, if you want to work with Lakshmi for wealth, that's fine. But she's really about gaining financial stability. Financial security for financial stability. All your needs are met, plus you have, maybe you're upper middle class. Or you have everything you need, a nice car, safe car, a nice place to live, a nice neighborhood, all those things, right? What the priest said was, if you're really working to acquire great wealth, there are certain deities for that, but there's a price to pay, your peace of mind. Everything in life has a trade-off. And not only was I seeing behaviors in her that are riddled with anxiety, and she finally said, I have OCD, or I'm OCD about this or that. And I thought it was kind of a joke, right? But now that I'm really spending more hours of the days with her, I'm seeing certain behaviors that are completely anxiety riddled with a capital A. Adjusting and readjusting 3 items, and then imagining it's perfect. And we're just going to drive up to the lake 10 feet away from the campsite to have coffee and look at the lake. So we did that. We got there in the morning. We had a beautiful little morning. I brought some lemon cake. We ate lemon cake and coffee, and she loved it. Very happy. Lake was beautiful. She absolutely loved it. And so do I. That's one of the things on my bucket list, is to be able to spend time right at a body of water that's big and beautiful. So we come into town, and I'm telling her about the Dollar Tree and the Five Below, and let's look for a floaty for you. She also needed a beach towel. I had a cooler I got for $3 on sale at Five Below. And then I also got a portable folding table to take outside, 50% off. So I showed her all these things I bought. Then we found a floaty, a donut. She found a device that blows up balloons, and she said maybe I can use this to blow up my donut. And then we start looking at the beach towels, and she just looked at every single one. It probably took 10 minutes for her just to compare every single beach towel, one with the other, and then one with the, and we finally ended up back to the first one we picked in the first place, which was blue. And then 3 or 4 things that she purchased, total of $12. She said, oh, I'm so happy I spent that money. I don't like to spend money on myself and so forth and so on, unless it's for work, right? She has her own little business. I'm like, okay. I go shopping every week. I need, my floaty has been good for 6 years. It's fine. So we blew that up and we went on down to the lake. Now, there's something else that happened while we were out there, guys. It's very interesting. Water is a natural conductor, and I should make another video about that. But we had been out there floating on the water for probably 20 minutes. And then I had a strange thought. I hope there's no big fish in this water. Oh my God. What would it come up, and bite my butt? Well, I forgot that I was actually sitting on a seat. My floaty is big. I've got a seat, and then there's a place for me to dangle my legs, and then there's a space actually for my back to kind of lean back. But it's not really deep in the water. Like if you're in a donut and your butt's hanging in the water. All of a sudden, my friend says, oh, Sabrina, I just got bit on the butt. I'm done. And I'm like, oh my God, did I transmit my thought and she caught it? So this proves that there is some emotional connection there. We've had something similar happen before. And I know that as the years have gone by, I'm not just a receiver, I'm also capable of sending. So, like a crystal, you can use water. Water is a conduit. You can send information, emotions, ideas, thoughts. She received it. She thought a fish bit her on the butt. I'm done. I'm done. I said, okay, I'm coming. So I'm paddling myself back to shore, and we get out. We were out there for about 30 minutes. People are telling me that I do look darker. We did have on sunscreen. We both went to beauty school. We both have a license in aesthetics, and I had sunscreen on my face as well, but I still got a little bit pink on my face. When you use the zinc oxide, you really just get tanned. You don't get burned. So I did not get burned. So we have our dinner. We cook our dinner again for Saturday night. And we start talking about all the work we were doing and all the things we forgot to bring and how tired we were. And we went to bed that night, Saturday night, and I was a little bit more comfortable because I had on my winter pajamas in August. I was sticky because of the humidity. I closed the windows, so I was less cold. And I did sleep a little bit better. But, there was this, don't talk so loud. Again, Saturday, when I'm just trying to talk in my normal voice at our campsite. Our campsite was huge. We could have put 10 tents on that site. Every other site we saw in all 3 sections where you could rent a campsite, none. Not a single one was as big as the one that we got. So far she's been really good at picking sites. Maybe nobody else wanted it. I don't know why. But it was on the corner. And I said, we're far away from the neighbor and they're inside their camper. The library. I guess because of her nerves. I don't know. So then we take a drive across the lake to another area where you can actually park and camp right by the shore on the east side of this lake. Boy, we really love that. So we talked about maybe another camping trip there. We looked at the sites. We talked about all of the advantages, or what were the best ones. And we even looked at the cabins, because I said, I think I need a cabin. I don't think I can do this anymore. I think I need a cabin. She didn't want a cabin. I said, okay. But I might rent a cabin for myself. This is my bucket list. This is at the top of my bucket list. I finally found a body of water. It's not very far. It's beautiful. And I'm going to be coming out here. So, I got to the point where I learned how to be comfortable in my skin and be by myself. And that's not an issue for me. Being out on my patio or my balcony by myself or with my cat, I'm very, very comfortable. That's a big part of knowing that you've been able to get rid of a lot of dysregulation in your nervous system. You can be alone and not be lonely. But that takes time, that takes maturity, that takes inner work. And I've done it. So on Sunday, she said, let's pack things up. Let's talk about doing things easier from now on. We were out Saturday afternoon, and we decided what we had already put in the back of the car. We got hungry, so we just ate out of the back of the car, and we said, hey, this is simple. Let's just do this. Everything else is getting to be a bit much. So it might have been Sunday, I'm not sure, but we drove to look again at cabins. And before we left, after we broke down camp and packed up the car, we went to have another little view of the lake and talk about the next trip. And we went around to the east side again and went, wow, look at all the people that are out here on Sunday. We were here Saturday and there was a few people, but there's a lot of people now over here on the water. Yeah, look at that. So then I'm pointing, look at the jet ski and the skiers and the water skiers, okay? And the two people sitting in this inflatable being pulled by a jet ski. And so I'm pointing, look there. And she says, don't point your finger in front of my face. I'm like, okay, I don't think I was pointing in your face. I'm telling you to turn your head and look right there. And she says, your arm is in front of my face. Now, guys, there have been incidences where after 7 or 8 years, I've gone to touch her or to demonstrate something, right? Where somebody came up to my face and she said, don't come that close to me. I'm like, okay. Or, I'd touch her and she said, don't touch me. And I thought, there's something wrong here. I don't know what it is. It was weird. After 7 years, you call yourself my friend, even though I've said we don't see each other very much. In my book, that's not really a friend. It's a casual acquaintance. No, we're friends. Okay. If you say so. So that's happened quite a bit, and it happened at the first camping trip, or no, the second camping trip this weekend. Can I approach? And she told me why she felt incredibly protective over her personal space. I said, okay, I get it, that's important. We all need to have that. But I have to ask, if I can approach and give her a hug, like for her birthday. So there's something about her that's not really comfortable with me, might not, be totally copacetic with me, right? When someone has this type of patterning, they're very competitive. They can be jealous and resentful, even though they've got true wealth sitting in the bank account. She told me on the drive that they live debt-free. They pay cash for their cars. Because I was talking about maybe financing a car. And they paid off their house. They're not even that concerned with credit because that's not really taken into consideration when you go to get a mortgage. And they would pay cash for their house. I'm talking money, guys, okay? But she's got some type of jealousy, not just towards me. I'm sure there's other things that she sees. It doesn't matter how much a person has when they've got this type of a condition. They can find one thing about you that they don't have, that they're now jealous of. All right, so I set a boundary about not bitching about my garage and having a garage and paying for a garage. It's none of her freaking business. And she said, okay, I'll drop it, and I won't bring it up again. But she brought it up again before our camping trip. That's crossing a boundary. I've asked how her family is doing each time that we've gone out on the weekend. I don't want to talk about my family. Not when I'm away from all of that. Like, okay. I don't know what I've ever said or done. Maybe I crossed a boundary and said something about how her son was behaving because now he's a teenager. I don't know. Because she won't talk about it. But I've learned over the years, when the issue with someone says, I don't want to talk about that anymore, I'm like, okay. I literally don't care. Years ago, before I was as healed as I am now, I would take it as a personal affront. You've got an insecurity, right? And you're thinking, what happened? What did I do? And now I just don't care. I think it's a little bit odd. So now I'm coming up with a whole list of behaviors that I'm finding strange for me to have to be around for any length of time. Going out for coffee or having lunch, maybe 2 hours spent together. It's not the same thing as 2 days. So, it's only been about 6 days that I've had with her. 3 in June and 3 this past weekend. The last thing she did to me was when I pointed my hand again, and I took my left hand because she was driving, and so I tried to keep my hand away from her face, but I was pointing at another boater out, and she said, if you push that hand in front of my face again, I'm going to grab your hand and pull your ring off of your finger. That was the end of it. I knew at that moment something drastic had just happened. And we are in the lunar eclipse. I think one of the last lunar eclipse of lunar eclipse season right now. And this brings a final end to whatever has not been in a state of rightness. And we just had a moon in Scorpio, which reveals a truth, sows a discord, or just reveals when things aren't right. But in this case, it's been like 5 days after, and we have lunar eclipse energy that was already there. I've spent the last 3 days grieving and trying to understand. Now, the other day, when we talked about possibly doing another trip in a cabin, which, by the way, she said, okay, I think I can share with you. I said, wait, what? You don't want to share a tent with me because you're not comfortable with that. You don't want to rent a cabin, but, you know, this is what I want to do now with my time. That's a beautiful body of water. I want to be there. That's important to me. I told her it's on my bucket list. And I'm going to try a cabin. Okay, I think I can share a cabin too. I'm like, what? What's going on? Either you psychologically can't share space with someone, or you just don't want to. But now because I'm going to go off on my own and rent a cabin, you think you can come along and share it with me. Maybe I don't want you there. The whole thing is more than I can process in my brain, guys. But one thing that I've decided is that when you threaten me with physical bodily harm and for some strange reason include the fact that you want to rip the jewelry off of my body before I'm even dead, it's just mind-blowing to me. And when someone has narcissistic patterning, guys, unfortunately, you can chalk them up to being a narcissist once they reach the age of 50, 56 years old. Now, I'm not going to kid myself into thinking I have to suffer and be her mirror every time she lashes out at me because she can't control herself. Her underlying problems could be the reason why she showed up at my apartment crying. I think her husband gave her an ultimatum. I'm just guessing. I'm not stupid. I've lived a long time. She had told me a few years before that she gave him an ultimatum. I said, ooh, I don't think it's a good idea to be making threats. She didn't know what I meant. And I think it's because she grew up with that. When she finally told me what was going on with her father in her household, and I said, that's narcissism. No, he's just da-da-da-da-da-da, and I know he's made my brother sick, and da-da-da-da-da, and he's suffered his whole life. I said, that's the parasite. There's an invisible siphoning of energy that's going on, along with the verbal oppression, all the things that have been expressed to me over our camping trips. And the first camping trip, we had a guy that was being very noisy at 10:15 on his phone, playing games. And under the trees, everything is magnified. And so she got up and went over there, and, you're being noisy. And he said, what? She said, you're very loud. I can hear this loud, whatever it is you're doing, music, playing games. And he said, oh, I'll turn it off. And she said, he's going to turn it off. I said, he's a jerk. And she got in her tent, and I said, I'm going to complain to the ranger in the morning at the office. No, don't do that. I'm like, why? Does my complaining reflect upon you badly? I'm not the one having bad behavior here. I knew the guy was going to do it again. I knew it. Sure enough, Saturday night he did it again. I said, are you going to go over there? She said, no, I'm going to complain to the ranger. I told you I could have probably put a stop to this if you had not insisted that I don't complain yesterday. Wow. And I knew that was a sign of someone who is really suffering a lot of anxiety, deep-seated issues. with control, which have to do with anxiety, guys, and insecurities. So I've made the painful decision to completely cut off any further interactions with this person. I've gone from telling her I'm not okay with threats of bodily harm, threats of removing jewelry off of my body because you perceive some type of a personal slight, with my arm across your personal space. I'm not even going to mention all the other things. Or scolding me about my financial situation when I casually mention that I might buy a scooter to scooter around, or some kind of a little camper, right? Well, it's just my opinion, and you can do whatever you want with it. But, Sabrina, you cannot buy anything until you pay off those outstanding debts. Well, that hit me like a ton of bricks. Someone who doesn't live your life in your financial situation, criticizing what you have or what you don't have, and how you can spend your money. The phase of life I'm in right now as a personality number 1 is becoming less and less materialistic. And in fact, I told her I paid cash for my car back in 2020. And I negotiated a cash discount. Have you ever done that? She said, no. Well, it was old and it needed work. But I got money off for the car, which I used to fix it. So based on the fact that I knew there was a problem up at the front of the car, I asked for $300 off. Would you take this amount of money? They said yes. And it was dirty and it smelled like cigarettes. So then we had lockdown. I couldn't drive it anyway. Got the temporary license. We were able to wait, I think it was 4 or 5 months before we had to go down to the DMV and get a license, pay for registration, and all of that. But in the meantime, I was able to pay the part and get it fixed, right? So I had a very inexpensive car that was running just fine, low maintenance, good gas mileage. I'm not looking really to have another car payment anyway. So the threats, the scolding, the domination, the suppression, the inability to let me just talk at a normal tone of voice, turn off the flashlight, biting my head off, my flashlight on the tent wasn't even in her face. I turned it off and went to bed. I didn't say anything. But I'm not going to kid myself this time like I have recently a year ago and overlook all of these red flags. Whether her father was a malignant narcissist or not, which, by the way, she was very distracted and finally said, about an hour later, I've got to go call my dad. He wants me to call him. I didn't say anything. If I hadn't said enough for her to get that she needs to cut off contact with him, when her own brother cut off contact after a number of years, then I don't need to be saying anymore. But when you say I don't want to deal with family over the weekend and then you go, you're suffering the guilt, the shame, and the obligation that the narcissist puts on you, constantly texting you. Call me, I want to wish you a happy birthday. Fuck off, Dad. You see, there's the mixed message there. Entanglement is not at all easy to get out of, guys. It's just not. You can absolutely practice managing, regulating your nervous system. I highly recommend this. whether it's listening to videos with rain or water or sound or music or mantras or lighting a candle every day. It does help to speak words of intention such as, I'm calm, I am regulated, I am relaxed, I attend to things in a relaxed manner, I attend to issues calmly. But it's also important to recognize that if you've gotten yourself in a situation that's now turned very, very sour, this person is not going to change. And there's nothing you can do to make them do anything different. You're going to be walking around on eggshells in a heightened state of alertness, waiting for the next drop, right? The next bomb. And it can be in a variety of ways. But apologizing and then admitting you've been putting up with me, there's only so many times that you can accept these apologies and realize they can't change. They are the way they are. And unless they've already been on a path of practicing how to regulate their nervous system and cut off their communication with a toxic family member, leave them alone. Chalk it up to lesson learned. Now you have more awareness. I'm no longer, I'm not okay with threats of bodily harm, especially from someone who wants to call themselves my friend. You know, threats that you will also, for some strange reason, remove my jewelry from my body to punish me, okay? Even further. Scold me about my choices in life of what I might purchase or pay for. You know, and I can't talk in a normal voice. I can't put the flashlight at my feet. I'm not going to go into all that. I'm not okay with threats. Okay, you made a threat against me of bodily harm for no real good reason. And to remove the jewelry from my body, you scolded me. I'm not okay with any of that, all right? So I think it's best that whatever attempt that we've made to try to be friends is not working. It's not successful. And as far as me feeling comfortable and safe in spending any more time with you, the answer is no. All right? Let's say her name is Sally. Sally, I think our time has come to an end. We've attempted to develop our acquaintanceship into a much more friendship type of relationship, and it's just not to say it's not working for me is an understatement. All right, I'm not okay with threats, I'm not okay with scolding, and I'm not okay with you crossing my boundaries. When I say I don't want to talk about the garage anymore and you keep bringing it up, but when you don't want to talk about family, I drop it. I don't disrespect that. I asked in June, how's the family? I don't want to talk about it. Okay. 2 months later in August, how's the family? I don't want to talk about it. Okay. This weekend is all about you. Fine, I get it. Even though she treated me, she purchased the space. She took me in her car. I'm going to take myself. I'm going to buy a day pass. I'm going to take myself. It's not that far. And I'm okay with being alone. She wants to go out there again next week. After work. for a few hours. And I said, well, I'm not sure what's going to happen. I can't commit to that. Well, I need to know so that, I know what's going on. And I said, look, life happens when you're making plans. Your son could break his arm. Your husband could get the flu. The car could break down. The fence in the yard could be fallen over again. You yourself could have another physical breakdown where you're exhausted and you need to rest. So if we can't go Thursday, maybe we can go Friday. If we can't go Friday, maybe we can go Saturday. I don't really want to give up my weekend because I could go out and DoorDash and make more money. And, if we can go on a Monday, or I'll take myself. She said, I don't want to go alone. Okay, I'm sorry. I don't have any problem going alone. So on our next final trip, I've done this before, I'll be saying goodbye. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't think I'll be hearing from her ever again. But you have to be willing to cut people off, guys. And if you're invested and all your stuff is in the house, just, if you have to, leave it. Pack your bag and leave. Your sanity is more important because you're only fooling yourself if you think the person will change. It's about you. What are you willing to put aside for your time and your life? How much longer are you going to put your life on hold, hoping and wishing and praying that things will get better? Toxic behaviors, you need to learn about them. They're here on YouTube. Many red flags, threats of physical harm, other problems going on, right? Especially addiction. Forget about it. All right. I've been on here for an hour. Thank you for your time. You can always watch this in parts. If you appreciate my work, you can donate to my PayPal. I'll put that link in here if it's not already there. And I'll try also my coffee, kofi.com/casting cauldron. You can read my posts. You can make a donation. And like and share and subscribe if you find this helpful. You can share with other people. We need to spread the word. These people, unfortunately, there's not a lot of people that are gaining awareness. And, it's hard because we're constantly triggering other people unintentionally. And we're going to be spending more time alone than we are with other people. All right. Blessed be. Namaste. Talk to you soon.